There comes a moment when your presence is so constant, so reliable, that it begins to fade into the background of someone else's life. They grow used to your energy, your laughter, your support, and they assume it will always be there. But the second you vanish, when you decide to step away and reclaim your power, everything shifts. Suddenly, the very thing they took for granted becomes the one thing they crave. That is the paradox of human nature. We rarely notice the fire until it no longer warms us. And when that fire is gone, the search begins. When you vanish, the very air changes. What once seemed so ordinary, so routine, suddenly feels hollow. Absence has a strange way of magnifying presence. When you are there, your voice, your laughter, your simple gestures blend into the background because they are constant. They become part of the daily rhythm, like the hum of electricity that keeps everything alive but rarely gets noticed. The moment that hum is gone, however, silence takes over. Silence is never empty. It screams, and in that silence, awareness grows. People start to feel the weight of your absence in ways they never felt your presence. It is almost ironic how the human mind works. It underestimates what is abundant and overvalues what becomes scarce. Think about it. When the sun rises every morning, people rarely pause to marvel at its warmth, its light, its gift of life. But the instant the sky darkens with clouds for too many days, or the night feels too long, they yearn desperately for the sun to return. That is exactly what happens when you vanish. The light you carried is missed the most when it is no longer shining on them. They don't realize in the moment how your energy was filling a room, how your presence was balancing chaos, how your love or support was holding everything together. But when you step away, that stability disappears with you and the void becomes undeniable. This awareness is not just emotional, it is physical. The absence is felt in the small details. The empty chair at the table, the quietness where laughter once echoed, the text that doesn't come through at the usual hour. All these little things start to pile up. At first, the mind may try to ignore them. It may rationalize, pretend it doesn't matter. But slowly, each missing piece builds pressure until the realization cannot be suppressed anymore. The absence becomes a presence of its own, a shadow that follows them everywhere, reminding them of what is no longer there. Awareness also strikes hardest when routines collapse. When you were there, life may have felt predictable, safe, structured. They knew you would answer, they knew you would show up, they knew your energy was part of their world, but vanish, and that security is gone. Suddenly, what felt stable becomes shaky, what felt easy becomes heavy. They begin to notice just how much they leaned on you, even in ways they didn't acknowledge at the time, and that recognition grows sharper with each passing day you're not there. The truth is, absence forces clarity. It strips away illusions and reveals reality in its rawest form. While presence can sometimes be blurred by familiarity, absence leaves no room for doubt. It forces the heart and mind to confront what was overlooked, what was dismissed, and what was underappreciated. The awareness that blossoms when you vanish is not a soft whisper, it's a jolt, a wake-up call that cannot be ignored. And it is in that moment of deep awareness that the search for you begins. Loss does something to the human mind that presence never can. It ignites the chase. When something or someone is always available, there is no urgency to hold on, no pressure to value it fully. People slip into the comfort of knowing it's there, and in that comfort, they stop fighting for it. But the second it's gone, everything changes. When you vanish, what was once taken for granted becomes the very thing they can't stop thinking about. The desire to chase, to reclaim, to somehow pull you back into their orbit explodes inside them. This is the strange dynamic of human nature. We only chase what feels out of reach, and the act of vanishing is what flips the switch. At first, the chase begins in the mind. The person starts replaying conversations, revisiting memories, and retracing steps. They think of all the things they could have said differently, the times they could have shown more appreciation, the moments they could have fought harder to keep you close. That mental chase consumes them. Thoughts they never bothered with before suddenly dominate their days. They wonder where you are, what you're doing, and who you're with. It's as if the absence creates a vacuum, and the mind races to fill that vacuum with searching, longing, and regret. But then it doesn't stop with thoughts. It turns into action. The person may reach out, they may try to reconnect, they may attempt to pull you back with promises they never thought they needed to make before. That is the power of loss. It forces action that presence never inspired. While you were there, the urgency wasn't there. They could always think, I'll do it tomorrow, or they'll still be here. But the moment you're gone, tomorrow feels like a threat, not a promise. They chase because the fear of losing you forever is far stronger than the comfort of having you always available. What's even more powerful is the emotional chase. This isn't just about physical presence. It's about the deep ache that comes when someone realizes how much of themselves was tied to you. They begin chasing not only your presence, but also the feeling they had when you were around. That warmth, that stability, that sense of belonging. Once it disappears, it becomes something they crave, and here's the truth: nothing else can fill it. They might distract themselves, they might try to replace you, but deep inside, the chase continues because your energy was unique, your impact irreplaceable. The chase reveals itself in countless ways. It could be desperate attempts to get your attention, subtle signs of longing, or even a quiet search through memories, but regardless of how it shows up, the pattern is the same. When you vanish, the one who thought they could live without you suddenly realizes they cannot. The absence makes them hungry, restless, determined, and that hunger fuels the chase, because deep down, they know they lost something they may never find again. Regret is one of the heaviest emotions a person can carry, and it almost always shows up when it's too late. When you vanish, regret begins to creep in like an uninvited guest, slowly but powerfully. At first, it might just be a passing thought, I should have appreciated that more. But as the days go on, those small whispers grow louder until they become a storm inside the mind. Regret doesn't strike while comfort is still present. It awakens in the silence of absence. It's in the quiet spaces when there's no one to laugh with, no one to lean on, no one to share life with, that regret begins its work. Regret doesn't just stay in the mind. It invades the heart. The person begins to feel the sharp edges of every missed opportunity. They recall the times they didn't listen closely enough, the moments they dismissed your feelings, the times they could have held on a little tighter but chose pride instead. Those moments, once brushed off as insignificant, suddenly become enormous in the light of your absence. It's as if the mind replays a movie over and over, but this time with subtitles that scream, "You should have done better." And the worst part of regret is that it comes with no reset button, no chance to rewrite the past. The regret deepens because it brings clarity. Sometimes people only understand the true weight of someone's role in their life when that role is no longer being played. They thought they could function without you. They thought life would continue unchanged, but when you vanish, they realize just how much you were holding together, not just in the external world, but inside of them. And with that realization comes a haunting question: why didn't I see it sooner? That question lingers in their mind, gnaws at their spirit, and becomes a heavy chain they cannot shake. Regret also comes with a sense of urgency that is almost unbearable. Once you are gone, they begin to understand that time cannot be reversed. Every day without you is another reminder that they cannot undo what has already been done. That urgency makes them restless, frustrated, and even angry with themselves. They may try to reach out, they may try to repair the damage, but even then, they carry the knowledge that the chance they had was already wasted. This realization is what makes regret such a painful teacher. It doesn't give second chances, it only gives lessons. In the end, regret is the shadow of absence. It follows the person everywhere they go, whispering reminders of what they could have done differently, of what they failed to protect, of what they lost because they didn't value it in time. When you vanish, regret becomes their companion, and no matter how much they try to silence it, it lingers. It forces them to live with the weight of their choices and the sting of knowing that what they miss most now is what they didn't cherish when they had the chance. Emotional dependence is something people rarely notice when they're immersed in it. When you are present, it feels natural, almost invisible, like air. They breathe it in, they rely on it, but they don't stop to think about what life would be without it. The moment you vanish, though, everything changes. That invisible support system is suddenly gone, and it hits them like a wave crashing without warning. They begin to realize just how much of their stability, their comfort, and even their sense of identity was tied to you. It's not just about missing your presence, it's about recognizing that without you, they feel incomplete, disoriented, and even fragile. This dependence shows up in subtle but powerful ways. They might notice they don't laugh as often, that everyday moments don't carry the same brightness, that silence in a room feels heavier than it ever did before. When you were there, you unknowingly filled those gaps, brought life into the mundane, gave rhythm to the ordinary. Without you, there's a void, and in that void, they discover that what they thought was their strength was, in fact, something you helped build. You were the anchor, the emotional foundation they didn't realize they were leaning on until it was gone. What makes emotional dependence so profound is that it isn't just about the highs of love or joy. It's about the subtle safety that comes from knowing someone is there. You become their sounding board, their comfort zone, their reminder that they're not alone in the chaos of life. When you vanish, that safety net disappears. Suddenly, the smallest challenges feel heavier, the daily grind feels more exhausting, and the loneliness feels sharper. It's not just the loss of a person, it's the loss of balance, of grounding, of stability that only you provided. Dependence also creates a kind of mirror effect. While you were present, they didn't have to question who they were as deeply because your presence affirmed their worth. You reminded them they mattered. You reflected back their value simply by being in their life. When you vanish, that mirror is shattered, and they are left searching within themselves for validation they never learned to give on their own. This is why the absence feels so overwhelming. It forces them to confront a reality they weren't prepared for, that much of their strength was borrowed from you. And so, emotional dependence becomes the quiet force that makes absence unbearable. It's not just about missing someone. It's about realizing that life without them feels fundamentally incomplete. The laughter doesn't echo the same, the victories don't feel as sweet, and even the routine feels heavier without their energy. They begin to recognize that their emotions, their confidence, even their sense of direction were intertwined with the one who's no longer there. When you vanish, the weight of that dependence becomes undeniable, and they are left to face just how much they leaned on you to hold their world together. Loneliness is one of the most powerful emotions a person can face, and it becomes unavoidable when someone important vanishes from their life. At first, they may try to mask it, filling their time with distractions, people, or work. They may convince themselves that they're fine, that life will continue as usual, but loneliness doesn't fade away that easily. It creeps in during the quiet moments, when the noise of the world dies down and there's no one left to talk to, no one left to share those little details of the day. That's when the emptiness hits hardest, the realization that the connection they once had is no longer there. This loneliness is not just about missing companionship, it's about missing the bond that made them feel seen and understood. The world can be full of people, yet feel completely empty when the one who mattered most is absent. They begin to notice the silence in the spaces you once filled. A laugh they want to share has nowhere to go. A thought they want to express finds no one to receive it. This loneliness cuts deeper because it reminds them that even in a crowded room, they feel incomplete without the presence they took for granted. Loneliness has a way of magnifying emotions. The smallest memory can suddenly bring a flood of feelings, leaving them overwhelmed. A place you both visited, a song that once played in the background, even a random scent, can awaken the void they try so hard to ignore. These triggers aren't just reminders of you. They're reminders of what they no longer have. And in that awareness, the loneliness intensifies because they realize how irreplaceable that connection truly was. It also forces them to face themselves in a way they never had before. When you were there, you absorbed some of the weight of their life. You shared in the struggles, celebrated the wins, and stood by them in the quiet in-betweens. Without you, they're left to carry that weight alone, and the truth is, it feels heavier than they ever expected. Loneliness exposes every weakness, every fear, every insecurity. It doesn't just remind them of what they lost. It shows them how much of their strength came from knowing someone was there to walk alongside them. Ultimately, loneliness transforms from a temporary feeling into a deep ache of absence. It becomes a companion they never invited but cannot escape. And the irony is, they only realize its power once it's too late. When you vanish, loneliness fills the spaces you once occupied, and no matter how hard they try, they can't shake it off. It's a constant reminder of the void left behind and the connection they long for but can no longer reach. This is the weight they carry, the piercing emptiness that grows heavier every day you're not there. Regret is one of the heaviest emotions a person can carry, and it often comes rushing in only after it's too late. When someone vanishes from their life, the mind begins to replay every moment, every choice, every word left unsaid. They start to think about the times they dismissed what was important, the times they didn't listen closely enough, or the times they assumed you would always be there. Regret is cruel because it doesn't just remind them of the past. It punishes them with the realization that the past cannot be changed. That sting of finality becomes sharper with every memory. What makes regret so powerful is its ability to magnify the smallest details. They begin to remember conversations where they weren't fully present, moments when they chose pride over vulnerability, or situations where they took love for granted. At the time, these choices seemed small, insignificant. But once you vanish, those choices transform into heavy weights pressing against their heart. They can't go back and fix it, and that helplessness gnaws at them. Regret doesn't just whisper, it shouts, replaying those missed opportunities until they are forced to face how differently things could have been if they had only acted sooner. Regret is also tied to self-awareness. In your absence, they begin to see themselves more clearly and often not in the way they'd like. They recognize the selfishness, the carelessness, or the lack of appreciation that they once brushed aside. This new clarity doesn't empower them. It breaks them because it comes too late to matter. They can't undo the moments when they failed to see your worth, and the deeper the bond once was, the stronger the regret becomes. It's not just about missing you. It's about realizing they had something priceless in their hands and let it slip away. This emotion also lingers longer than others. Pain may fade with time, loneliness may be softened with new connections, but regret carves itself deep into the soul. It shows up uninvited at night when the world is quiet, whispering, "What if?" It shows up in the presence of others who remind them of you, making them wonder what life would be like had they chosen differently. Regret doesn't allow peace, it forces reflection again and again until the lesson is etched permanently into their being. In the end, regret is what truly breaks them. It's not just your absence, it's the understanding that they had every chance to value you, every opportunity to show up for you, and they didn't. That realization is a wound that never fully heals. It becomes part of them, shaping how they see the world, how they see relationships, and most importantly, how they see themselves. When you vanish, regret becomes the shadow that follows them everywhere, a constant reminder of what was lost and what can never be regained. When we step back and look at the bigger picture, one undeniable truth rises to the surface. Absence has a way of revealing realities that presence could never make clear. When you're there, everything feels normal, steady, and often unnoticed. But the day you vanish, the ground shakes beneath their feet, and the comfort they took for granted disappears. This is when realization begins, when every moment of complacency transforms into awareness, when every silence becomes a painful echo of what is no longer available. Your absence becomes the mirror they cannot turn away from, forcing them to see what they overlooked. The journey they go through after you're gone is layered and relentless. First comes confusion, the desperate search to find where you've gone, both physically and emotionally. Then comes the loneliness, the nights that stretch endlessly, the days that feel hollow without the connection they once knew. After that comes the pain of memories, the constant reminders that life feels different without you in it. And as all of these emotions swirl together, regret takes hold, pressing on them with the weight of every missed opportunity. It's in this process that the depth of your presence and the power of your absence becomes undeniable. What's most striking is how absence creates transformation, not just for the one who has lost, but for you as well. It reveals strength within you because choosing to walk away or simply not being available shows them the boundaries of what they cannot cross. It shows them the true value of connection because when something is gone, the heart suddenly wakes up to how precious it really was. Absence becomes a teacher, louder and more effective than words ever could be. It instills lessons that will follow them for the rest of their lives, and as much as the pain might consume them, it also forces growth. They begin to see the importance of cherishing the present, of valuing the people who matter most, and of living in a way that doesn't leave room for regret. That's the hidden gift of absence. It doesn't just break them, it awakens them. It pushes them into a deeper understanding of love, connection, and gratitude. What was once overlooked now becomes unforgettable. What was once taken for granted now becomes the memory that drives change. So the conclusion is clear: when you vanish, the world they once knew begins to shift. They search, they ache, they break, and they regret. But through all of it, they realize your value in ways they never did before. Your absence becomes the force that makes them confront their own truth, the mirror that shows them who they are and what they've lost. And in that space of loss, they are left with only one undeniable fact: they miss you more deeply than they could ever admit while you were still there. Thank you for allowing me to share this message with you today. I want to remind you that these words are not just about loss, regret, or absence. They are about truth, awareness, and growth. Every moment we live, every connection we hold, carries weight, and it is up to us to decide whether we treat it lightly or with the reverence it deserves. As you walk away from this speech, carry with you the understanding that your presence is powerful, your absence is impactful, and your choices shape not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Never underestimate the value of your worth, and never allow anyone else to either. I deeply appreciate your time, your energy, and your willingness to reflect with me. If even one sentence, one idea, or one truth resonated with you today, then this moment has done its work. Let it guide you towards strength, clarity, and purpose in your own relationships and within yourself. Remember, your absence speaks as loudly as your presence. Use that power wisely. Live in such a way that regret does not follow you, and cherish what and who you hold in your life today. Thank you once again, and with that, I say goodbye for now. Stay strong, stay true, and never forget the power you carry within you.